Hello friends, this is Shivam and welcome to the next tutorial of this series. In this lecture we will be seeing how to calculate the correlation coefficient and how to build a regression model, a linear regression model for the dataset. The dataset that we are using here consists of two variables, the x variable and the y variable, and 15 entries for both of these variables. So this is a pretty simple data set that we are using over here. So in the first part, what we will be doing is calculating the correlation coefficient. So to calculate the correlation coefficient, we need to click on the data ribbon and we need to select the data analysis pack, and you have to select the correlation and click OK. Now you have to provide the input range. Like providing the input range, you need to select the data entries for x and y variable, and you can see that the data is grouped by the column. So you need to check on the column uh, option here, and we have already selected it, and we haven't selected the label, so we need to uncheck it, and we want the output range to be on the same worksheet. So and we can choose any of the area, any of the cell that where we want the correlation coefficient output. So we have selected this cell and we can click over here, and now after checking that all the variables we have checked, we can click the OK, and this is the output, and the output or the correlation coefficient for these two variables is minus 0.12, which is a negative correlation. So there is a negative correlation between these two variables, x variable and y variable. Also that negative correlation is not that much, but there is a negative correlation. You can also check this thing by plotting a line chart. By plotting a line chart, you can add the line chart from here. You can see that we have added the line chart over here. So this is the way to add a line chart, stacked with line chart. You can rename this. So there you can see that how these x and y variable are changing, and there is a correlation of minus 0.12 between these two variables, x variable and y variable. In the next step, what we need to do is to build a linear regression model for these data set. Like to do this, we need to click on the data and then on the data analysis, and we have to select the regression over here. Now we need to provide the input range. The input range we have already selected. This is the input range. Like we need to select it, the input y range. In the same way, we can select the input x range, and this is the way to do this. And since we haven't considered the label, so we need not to check on it, and we can also put the confidence interval of 95% or 90% that you 85% that you want, but in this case we will not be putting the confidence interval. And this is a simple example of our linear regression. In the next tutorials we will be building a multiple linear regression where we will be having a number of independent variables for a dependent variable. So in this case we have only one dependent and one independent variable, so we need not to consider the confidence interval and so much complexities. So we want the output of the linear regression on the same worksheet, so we can select it over here and click OK. And you can also choose the various options that you can see over here, but we are not going to use these. But so to build the model, you have to again see your entries to be correct, right, and then click OK. So this is the linear regression for the data set for the x variable and y variable, and you can see the various output over here. You can see that ANOVA, analysis of variance, is shown, like degree of freedom, sum of squares, mean square value, the FS statistics, and the significance statistics, like the this is the output for the linear regression that we have built for this data set. And you can see the summary output over here. We have the following output of our regression model. You can see the multiple R value, the R square value, and it is quite less. You can see that the model is quite good, and the standard error is also not that much high, and the number of observations, it is also showing the number of observations are 15. You can see the analysis of variance, the various parameters are being shown here. You can see that the degree of freedom is total, the degree of freedom is 14, which is always n minus 1, n is the number of observations. You can also check the various the parameters that of the ANOVA, like df, degree of freedom, sum of squares, mean squares, f statistics. And then we were talking about that the f statistics here is lower than the significant f statistic value. So the model is quite good, and you can see that the intercept value is 195.75 and the x variable value is this. So based on this coefficient thing, 195 and the x variable 1 coefficient, this coefficient model, you can predict the values of y based on x based on this regression model. So these are the things that we will be needing, like we want to predict the values of y for the given values of x. So we will be using these coefficients values, like you have seen that in case of a linear regression model, the formula of the linear regression model is y is equal to mx plus b, or so. So these are the values that we require to predict the values of the dependent variable based on the independent variable. So in the next tutorial, next coming tutorial, we will be seeing how to make predictive models based on the regression, multiple linear regression model. So we will be seeing that, so these coefficient values are quite necessary over there. So basically, so this is the way to build the linear regression model based on the given data set. We have considered quite a simple data set over here. And this is the way to build the correlation, to evaluate the correlation coefficient, to build the line chart, and to evaluate, to create the linear regression model. So this is the fourth tutorial of this series, and we have learned how to calculate the correlation, how to create a stacked line chart, and how to build a linear regression model. So this was the fourth tutorial. Thanks.